think we're good.
Cool. I'm going to.
So, hi everyone. Thank you for coming. If you are watching this after we are live streaming, very understandable. Totally get it. We're still funny. Don't worry. So, this is on Nirali's channel. Do you want to introduce yourself? Or
I'm Nirali. If you're subscribed to me, you know that.
We hope.
Yeah, and today we're discussing Looking for Alaska by John Green for our Banned Books Book Club because it's summer and we wanted something that was pretty that was a reread for both of us.
Mhm.
And we realized that it had been a long time since we talked about a straight white man in Banned Books Book Club.
Quite some time.
Have we ever?
I want to say we have. I don't know if that's true.
I don't.
I'm gonna check real quick. I mean, we are gay Asians. It's not exact. Sometimes these stories are just so hard to relate to.
I know. It's just, you know. That's so funny. If we I genuinely don't think we have, because if they were white and male, they were queer.
Okay, so my answer is it depends on how we feel about mouse.
Oh, right.
So let's say maybe.
That is like such a different thing. I feel like we did mouse so long ago that like
it was like last year.
Yeah, and it was also still like a minority voice. It was
yeah.
Jewish people and Holocaust survivors. So it's hard to call that like a straight white man writing a manic pixie dream girl.
Yeah.
You know.
Still straight, still technically white, but like this is really the first one of like this we've read.
Yeah, it's that's so funny.
We're doing so great.
Yeah.
But I guess this is also really a commentary on what books get banned.
Yeah.
Because
this is, while this book has been banned for a very long time, it's one of the very few that's by someone as John Green as John Green.
Yeah. We went for a lot of these books based on what was on the like top 10 or this year like the top 13 most banned or challenged books that's put out by the American Library Association. And because we are going by their more recent list, we're looking at what is controversial now. And what's currently being banned or currently being opposed to. And what's interesting about it is this year, Looking for Alaska tied for 5th after not making the list for several years. It used to be on the list.
Yeah.
Like one that was closer to first coming out was on the list a little bit more often.
It has been frequently challenged, very frequently. And I think we both know this because the author talks about it a lot on YouTube, and we're both nerd fighters. We both watch John Green's videos and read his books, and are in that community.
We were around for it. I got to celebrate Esther Day earlier this week. It was fun. Yes. I quite liked it. Whenever I had
Esther Day.
Thank you. I love you so much. Great.
I love you.
Yeah. It's a fun time. Nerdfighter is like a really nice community of people who like very enthusiastically love each other in the world and try to make the world a better place. And because John and Hank are both authors, and John's debut novel gets banned quite frequently. Not as frequently as any of his other novels. It's just something we talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably one of the first times because I was a teenager when I first read John Green's books and discovered like his videos. It was the first time I saw an author discussing their own work being banned. Like I knew that like books had been challenged, and like I remember like the ALA's banned books week, but this was like someone who literally discussed the excerpt that was like specifically being challenged and why it was important for young people to read that type of work. So it was a bit of an intro for me to like why people challenge books in the first place. And now it's a lot more complicated than just the reasons this is challenged, which is profanity and sexual content. But that's still a huge part of why books get banned. And the definition of sexual content has expanded a lot to just mean queer people in recent years, but it's
regardless
also straight
if
sex.
anything sexual happens.
Yeah. But also straight sex is highly policed in communities that want to ban books.
Yeah. And I'll also say it's really interesting the history of these bans for John Green's books specifically. So this book was published in like 2005, 2006. I could open it and find out which year. I don't know. And I'm not going to do that.
2005. Yeah.
Yeah. But it didn't make the top 10 list until 2012 when The Fault in Our Stars came out.
Mm-hmm.
Because he got
a lot of attention.
People started being like talking about it. And then he was on the top 10 list for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
On and off, up there. And then after 2016, he does not appear again until 2022.
Wow. 2016 feels very... That feels like very on purpose.
That's a very different time.
Yeah. Everything kind of not changed. Things were being said that were not said in a long time in 2016. And maybe for the book banners, it felt more important to ban books by queer people and people of color than this book about a cis straight white guy learning the complexity of life.
Yeah, I will say the first year that he is not on the banned book list for like that little stretch of time, it's the year that The Hate You Give gets published.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, so the publishing industry really started to shift then into publishing more diverse books, which is great. Love that. A lot of my favorite books made it onto the banned books list because they were recently published in the past like 8 years or so to me tell these more interesting and wider range of stories that a lot of people don't like. But we're also seeing now this big uptick in banned books. And if you're on the banned book list once, what I've noticed is that it's harder to make it in future years because once you're banned, you don't need to re-ban it. That'd be silly.
But the thing about The Hate You Give is that that was number one for like 2 years. They didn't publish a paperback copy of the novel until like 5 years later or something ridiculous. Oh. Or is there still not a paperback edition of The Hate You Give? I think there is now.
I think there is, yeah.
But it took a very, very long time because it was a number one bestseller for that long.
Yeah.
So it was like people were interested in Black stories about Black perspectives, and then like reactionary saw that and we're like, okay, we're gonna focus on the people of color and the queer people now and ban those books.
These books that are just starting to be able to be published with a wide reception. So yeah, I think that's really makes Looking for Alaska unique, and that it is a perspective of a white cis straight guy who is incredibly Christian. The book isn't, but he is. And I'll also say what really makes it interesting is that it's not that extreme in any of its like sentiments, like politically.
No.
It's not a very radical book in any way at all.
Yeah, I think what is shocking is like when you discuss what the book is about, like plot wise, it's about a girl who dies.
Mhm.
And it is about a school experiencing the death of a troubled teenage girl.
Yeah.
And that is something that is pretty taboo. It's pretty taboo to discuss like the mental health issues of teenage girls.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like the grief was really the big component that was new to me.
Mm-hmm.
When I first read it when I was 17, maybe 18. It happened the summer I turned 18. I read this for the first time. But a lot of this like ideals presented in this book, they didn't feel new to me.
Mm-hmm.
I knew there were kids that drank alcohol and smoked cigarettes.
Yeah.
I wasn't cool enough to be invited to hang out with them, but I
Me
knew they
neither.
existed.
Yeah. And yeah, the content wise in terms of like explicit content, I had an older sister and I still have an older sister. I have an older sister, but back in the day.
I'm so glad she's still here.
No, but like back in the day when she was in high school and I was in like 8th grade, Gossip Girl was all anyone watched in her age group.
It was everywhere.
It was everywhere. It was everything. And nothing in this book. Also, she watched the OC. She watched One Tree Hill. Like all of it. All of those teen soap operas. And considering this was like published in 2005, nothing about this book was shocking to me when I read it, because everything that occurs in this book has occurred in either the OC, One Tree Hill, or Gossip Girl.
Yeah, I would say the biggest difference is that this explores people with less access to wealth.
Oh yeah.
That's just because Miles, who has money and his parents do pay for the sporting school, gets a roommate that's a scholarship kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's the only reason he's hanging out with these kids.
But it's still about a private school where everyone drinks all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's only like one guy who enforces the rules, which does not feel like a good way to like chaperone hundreds of students.
No. And I think there's something like interesting to be said about the lack of supervision and how that grants these kids a lot of freedom, but also it's like but they have enough respect for the eagle to like not cross the lines when it matters.
Yeah.
Because he like the eagle like lets them get away with enough that they're like, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe they don't respect the eagle, but it like seemed like he was like the eagle was like a kind of laissez-faire kind of ruler where he was like, if I strictly enforce like lights out at 11 and things like that, but let them kind of run wild between those rules, they'll get away with things.
I think,
I don't know.
There's also the thing that you get when a lot of people leave home for the first time. They're, I guess, going to a boarding school for high school or going to college for the first time or moving out, is that you suddenly lose a lot of structure in your life and you're able to get away with so much more that like, more than a few friends of mine ended up changing a lot that first year they were away. But because this is still a really structured environment with like very clear rules that are enforced, and usually the ones that are easy to enforce, you can tell when someone's lights are out from a distance. You don't need to check. You do have that autonomy to do better and find ways to succeed. And I think the eagle knew that.
Yeah.
But I also think there were things that the kids could do there that would just be immediately expelled.
Yeah. Like
Um,
the reason Alaska is kind of a pariah to the rich kids is because she ratted two of them out, and got two kids expelled.
well, they don't know that yet.
Well, they
But
don't,
yes.
but like the colonel is a pariah, and
Yeah.
and the colonel and Alaska are best friends, but like,
Yeah. That something happened.
mm-hmm.
And it is, first of all, what a great way to get a single room.
Yeah.
Just on par, knowing that your roommate is with their partner smoking marijuana, which was a much bigger deal back in 2005 than it is now.
How did they even get
And
it?
drinking. I mean, maybe they had a dealer back home. They went back for the weekends.
I'm just like, yeah. I mean, I guess because it's the rich kids, like it makes sense. But I'm just like, even in my high school, when people smoked weed, I was just like, but who are you talking? What is happening?
I had been trying to figure that out for so long, and I still am.
I don't know, and I'm good not knowing.
Yeah, I kind of want to know still, like, because it just doesn't make sense with some of the people who everybody knew in the school could get them. They didn't have like older siblings.
Mm-mm.
They were never the kids with a lot of money.
No.
They were just left there wondering what connections do you possibly have? Do you have your own plant? Like, is that what we're landing on? But anyways, what happened a lot in my high school, much more frequently, was alcohol use.
Oh yeah, same.
Yeah, and even then, alcohol is a lot easier to get a hold of because most people's parents would drink.
Yeah.
So it's really amazes me how just the sheer amount of alcohol that these kids have.
Yeah, that wasn't it, but it was also like really shitty alcohol that they had because they couldn't afford decent alcohol and they didn't have access to their parents' liquor cabinets. So they had to use their own bad fake IDs to try and get alcohol from a liquor store.
A liquor store who is likely only in business because it is near a boarding school that is for high schoolers.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure the employees of that liquor store know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
But I guess the IDs are good enough. It's just, what a time. Yeah.
It's just, I love how we ended up talking about the like logistics of getting contraband as a teenager, and I just don't understand it.
I mean, I will also say nobody offered me anything until after I graduated high school, and I was like, at the time, I was a little bit offended by that because obviously I was not a narc. I would have likely turned things down had I been offered, but I wasn't a narc. You know, they could have invited me to parties. And looking back now, I'm realizing I was friends when I was in like 10th grade. Most of my friends were seniors.
Yeah.
And they did not invite me to their parties. And looking back now, I'm realizing they were really responsible people.
Yeah, that's like a good thing.
Yeah. They're 18-year-olds who would happy to befriend the 15-year-old in the same clubs as them. And that was it.
Yeah. No, that's...
So thanks, guys.
Yeah. I also think like so much of this book is about how someone who's like kind of a loser can get into really unhealthy relationships with people. I just thought of this because at the beginning of the book, like Pudge has 0 friends in his regular school, so he chooses to go to boarding school because he's just like, there's nothing for me here in public school. I'm gonna go halfway through high school, go to a boarding school, just to see if I can make something of it that's like not just loneliness.
We gotta seek that great perhaps somewhere.
Yeah. So I just think it's interesting that he was this loner kid who like didn't have any real friends, gets to school, immediately has an unhealthy crush on this girl with a boyfriend who has some sort of mental illness.
Yeah.
Like, and like stays friends with her, and they keep flirting, and like it's just not healthy the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think that it's interesting, even though I don't think it's like necessarily, and like even with the Colonel, like he just gets into cigarettes because his friend is into cigarettes, and like just keeps buying them cigarettes.
The peer pressure, man.
There's just so much peer pressure involved, and it's just like, well, and like I feel like this main character just kind of like goes with the flow a lot, which is interesting for a main character, because like he chooses to do things, but it's in order to keep things. It's in order to make others happy.
Yeah. His people pleaser tendencies are not going to serve him well throughout his whole life.
No.
Not at all. But one thing I'm also seeing is like a lot of this happens a lot. I think that's why a lot of these children, I'm just gonna start reminding myself that these are children and not friends that I know. Because it feels like they've been there this whole time.
They're so well written.
Years.
Like the characters are so well written.
Yeah. I think what I really liked is all of these kids are in relationships they shouldn't be in, and they know they shouldn't be in, but they don't have anything better as an option. Like the Colonel hates his girlfriend, and his girlfriend hates him.
They do not like each other, and I'm glad they break up.
Not at all. And when we meet her, they had been dating already for like 9 months. That's like so much of their lifetime at this age.
Yeah, that's a committed relationship.
Yeah. Had I been dating someone for 9 months when I was a junior in high school, you know what would be happening? We'd be planning out colleges together and like what our future will look like.
Which, if you're a young person and with someone you want to stay with, do not plan your college life around that person. Just do not. Please do not.
It's perfectly fine to apply to some of the same schools, but make sure you actually want to go. Those application fees are so much.
Just wanna
so much.
Do that.
Yeah. Live your own life. It's okay. But like all of these kids are like getting pushed into relationships that they don't want to be in because it feels like they should be.
Yeah.
Like Miles dates Laura because it feels like they should be. They have sex because it feels like that's a thing they should do. Not because
it's like Alaska pushes them into a relationship because it seems like Alaska doesn't want to think about Miles as someone she wants to be with, so she's like, you let me set you up with this girl. So they're pushed into this relationship that they both just kind of go along with to get along, and then they have sex that's not very good. Neither of them seem particularly interested in each other, and are more into the fact of the mechanics of sex. You know, they're like, it's like one of those like science experiment type things of like, let's see if this is something that like is fun. Everyone says this is fun. Let's try it out.
And they didn't think it was fun because they didn't like each other.
Yep.
And I'm blown away by how little these characters actually like each other when they're in these relationships. Like, Alaska calls her boyfriend very regularly.
Yeah.
And we meet him and he's fine. But I have no idea what their relationship was actually like Because
Yeah.
Pudge doesn't.
Yeah, because I mean, part of it is that like Miles is so incurious about Alaska's relationship with her boyfriend because he has such a crush on her, and he doesn't want to humanize the boyfriend who in his head is stealing Alaska away from him. So we just don't know anything about him because it's a first person novel.
Yeah. I think that really says a lot about how Pudge is. He is a deeply uncurious person about Alaska because he likes the way he imagines her.
Yeah.
And doesn't want to learn more. But he's also not that interested in the other people around him.
No. When Alaska dies, he is so subsumed by his own grief that he like refuses to talk to anyone other than the Colonel, who like he thinks is the only person who knows what happened that night. So his other friends like Takumi and Lara just get completely ignored until it's like actually confronted that he's being a bad friend and a bad, you know, and his own grief isn't the only thing that matters.
Yeah, because this is an experience that they're all going through together. And just because the Colonel and Miles, they were the last people to see her, that does not mean that they own the experience of that grief.
Yeah. And also it's later revealed that they weren't the last people to see her. So they're like, it's also a lot of self-flagellation of like feeling guilty because they didn't stop her from leaving. And then they find out that they weren't the only ones who didn't stop her from leaving. So it's like if you feel guilty, then we all feel like, yeah. It's like sharing the guilt of like not knowing, of honestly being a kid and not understanding how to stop something horrible from happening, which is, you know, reminiscent of Alaska's experience when she was a child. And like, it's like they're experiencing what Alaska experienced when she was a child that kind of fucked her up.
Yeah. There's no really getting around it because there's only so much you can control.
Yeah. And blaming yourself isn't like helpful.
Yeah. Like I think it's reasonable that they all should have learned not to help their friends sneak out with their car when they're incredibly drunk.
Yeah.
But
that's a good lesson to learn for everyone.
I'm glad they learned that, I hope. But like making a mistake like that, well, awful and terrible, does not mean you are solely responsible for what happens.
Exactly. Because like a lot of this book is about how Alaska kind of, in Miles's perspective, Alaska is in charge of everything. You know, like he is not the one with agency. Alaska's the one with agency. So then when she dies, suddenly he's like, wait, but I had agency the whole time and didn't use it to like do anything.
Yeah.
I also I thought of this while we were talking about like the relationships. There is a compulsory heterosexuality reading of the relationships in this book.
Oh, for sure there is. There's not a part of me that thinks these kids are. You're telling me Laura, who just said, what if I gave you a blowjob, is straight? That doesn't make any sense. Not a lick of sense.
Also, like Alaska going, well, boys and girls should be together, so like dolls, I'm going to put the Barbie and Ken together. I also just saw the Barbie movie, by the way.
I haven't seen it yet.
So good. I'm gonna put the Barbie and Ken together and just make them kiss like this, even if they're not interested in each other. Is very like compulsory heterosexuality.
Yeah.
Like all these kids are gonna grow in like 5 years. They're gonna be like, Maybe I'm not as straight as I thought. This
I
forced
think
interest
Miles
in
is
this girl.
exactly as straight as he thinks he is. But everyone else,
I think he might be bi.
maybe.
He's only interested in one girl.
No. I also think about, I guess, how hot must Alaska have been?
I think it just like based on the descriptions, she was just like a normal girl.
Yeah. Like I imagine she was a pretty attractive
Sure.
person.
Sure.
But like to
I
be
feel,
idolized so quickly.
yeah, I feel like a lot of what it is like this person who you have something and who is intellectually meeting you where you're at a little bit and is smarter than you because, you know, she taught her entire friends group pre-calc. So it's like this smart girl giving you attention. This smart girl who feels in charge of things giving you attention.
Yeah. I've also been thinking about, I guess, is the attention if it's just the attention that makes her so desirable, how lonely was this kid before?
Oh, so no one came.
Like,
2 people
so
came to his birthday, to his goodbye party,
and they did not know him well.
They didn't know him well, and also it like I feel like a lot of it is also like his parents don't seem very connected with him. Like they were like very okay with this kid staying at school for Thanksgiving and immediately planning a Europe trip, instead of like wanting him home. And like the conversations between him and his parents are like pretty shallow until like the big prank where he and his dad actually connect on something real.
Yeah. Which like
I think he like for half of this book he's grieving one of his best friends / the girl he was in love with, and the parents don't offer him anything, don't like provide any emotional support.
Yeah. And it just makes me feel like maybe they weren't capable of it.
Yeah, it's like they also have this weird kid who is obsessed with famous last words, and they just don't know how to deal with him.
Yeah. I mean, his mom could talk small for hours. Like, that's not someone who you can have a conversation about death with.
So like, just like in the Barbie movie when she goes, "Do you guys ever think about death?" And everything stops and everyone stares at her, which is in the trailer, so I'm not spoiling anything.
Oh yeah, it's very true.
Looking for Alaska just is the Barbie movie. That's
just a less pink version. All right, actually, so let's talk about the aesthetics for a little bit with the book covers, because I really like the story of the covers. So I have what is very close to the original cover. What's missing is there used to be a little candle right here, a little stub of a candle. And because this was the original design, more or less. And then John Green was told...
Yeah, this was the original design. And then,
it wasn't released like this, though. Because someone told John Green, this looks too much like cigarette smoke. And John Green said, it is cigarette smoke. They smoke constantly in this book.
But you can't have that on a cover because people are not going to like it, is
Booksellers,
what he was told.
Yeah. It'd be difficult to shelf in a young adult or teen section if it's cigarette smoke.
Which, can we discuss the covers of the Gossip Girl books? And all those mini skirts and legs? Like, how is that easy to shelve in YA and not? Anyway, it's just like I'm considering the content.
My theory. First of all, my theory was always, and I stand by this now, boys don't read.
No,
that was just my thought. you can get away with so much if you say that it's aimed towards other girls. But, cigarette smoke, objectively, lots of adults have a problem with teen smoking. And I think that's good. I think the fact that there's a tiny little subsection that were born too late for when smoking cigarettes was normal, but born too early for vaping to be cool.
Oh yeah,
we're all gonna have great skin forever.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah, for just our age group, the
our
lung cancer rate,
specific age group,
so low.
Yeah,
yeah, and it's really just people that are currently 26 to 35.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. We're the only group that gets that.
But yeah, so originally it was supposed to be cigarette smoke, and then the candle was added on so that it looked like a candle was being blown out, which does thematically make sense considering it's about this girl who died.
Death.
But it just it doesn't fit with the themes of this book. It doesn't fit with the book really at all. The only time candles are mentioned that I remember is Alaska saying that the last Thanksgiving when she was by herself at the school, she melted all her candle stubs together into one big candle.
Yeah. I feel like it doesn't come up often.
No. And it's just that's just something this weird girl did because she was bored.
Yeah. And it's just...
Yeah. It just didn't fit thematically, and the point was that it was cigarette smoke. So eventually, finally, they removed the candle, and I remember John's video about that. He was so happy.
He was, and I think it was around 2012, 2013 that they removed it. And I think it's because John Green had made such a name for himself.
Yeah.
That it no longer mattered.
Mm-hmm. The name John Green sells books.
Yeah.
So
they didn't have to do as much work on the marketing side to sell John's books.
Mm-hmm. John Green is kind of his own marketing machine at this point. John and Hank they don't need they won't say they don't need a publishing.
Let me say this. I think John is so good at marketing that it makes up for the fact that Hank isn't.
Yeah.
This man never told me where to pre-order his book or when it was coming out unless John prompted him to.
Yeah. Also, John's the one who bought the billboards for An Absolutely Remarkable Thing.
Yeah. But both of these men have enough money. And I like their stories a great deal.
Mm.
But they have enough of a fan base that they don't need as many restrictions on their marketing teams.
Yeah. Which is nice. And then I have the special 10th anniversary edition, which I really love because it looks like a chalkboard and the cigarette smoke is drawn in chalk. And a big thing about the ending of this book is that the religion teacher writes Alaska's favorite quote at the top of the classroom, at the top of the blackboard, and it stays there through the year. And their final is kind of answering her question that she posed with that quote. So it really works.
So conveniently, the only comment that currently exists on this live stream is that quote.
How will I ever get out of this labyrinth? Yeah.
And I don't know.
Also, can we talk about the end paper being a maze?
Ooh, I quite like that.
It's a really good book cover. It's just all a maze. And it says how will I ever get out of this labyrinth in the back end paper, which I really enjoy. But yeah, I appreciate that they, first of all, for the 10th anniversary edition, did not use the candle, and also increased the amount it's relevant to the book. It's not just cigarette smoke; it's also it's about school. They're in a classroom, and the quote on the blackboard is really, really important at the end of the book.
Yeah, I think it's all nice. and gets more and more cohesive.
Yeah.
In further iterations. And I also think that's not something that you would offer a debut novelist.
No.
So, like, I've got it all worked out.
Yeah. Eventually, but he had to write The Fault in Our Stars first because it says #1 international best-selling author of The Fault in Our Stars up top.
Yeah.
Also, conveniently, The Fault in Our Stars also looks like chalk, the cover.
It does.
So it fits that.
You know, I bet John was really playing the long game with these cover illustrators. Just going back to fix old mistakes strategically with his new books.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I just loved about this book is despite all of the serious stuff happening, it's a really funny book. It's pretty funny and clever. And like I was laughing out loud when they did the big final prank of hiring the stripper for Alaska, like in honor of Alaska.
Yeah. Like, I think the pranks were really, really fun in general. And I think it being Alaska's last, like, mastermind prank being so uniquely hilarious. It's just a beautiful and fun thing.
And it's also like, yeah. Sorry, it's also the thing that like brought everyone together after her death. Like every single junior in the school knew about it and didn't leak it, and it brought together kind of the rich kids and the not rich kids in the school.
Yeah,
and everything. Like everyone was in on it, which was really fun.
And nobody told.
Nobody ratted.
Yeah. And like they have a culture of no snitching, but to really have that many people involved.
Exactly.
And still pull it off. A miracle. Like what a testament to her. Yeah, I just really liked it. I liked a lot of the pranks of this book actually, because I thought, especially the first time I read them, I remember thinking all of these pranks are uniquely hilarious. And I don't know if that's true, but they are all very funny. And like
setting off firecrackers isn't to, like, particularly original, but it's fun.
Isn't it? It's effective. And I just remember thinking that all of these things, while small, really combined with, like, especially like the like quips in this book and how like there's so many good like one-liners and it's very like punchy.
Yeah,
it all really combines to create an atmosphere that is kind of like joyful and silly while being like just a little bit mean. And that's a lot of what high school felt like for me.
Yeah, definitely. It's like it's still hard, but there's joy in it.
Yeah. And I guess I also like that none of the pranks that Alaska orchestrates are things that can really cause harm to other people, or are meant to cause harm to other people, at least.
Yeah.
They're all relatively lighthearted, or
like the dyeing everyone's hair blue. Things. Yeah. Dyeing everyone's hair blue as a revenge is like not particularly harmful to anyone.
No. It's fun. It's just hair. Hair dye doesn't even last that long.
No.
Like it'll wash out after a little bit. It's all pretty simple. And it was as revenge too. So they were like, there's a difference, and we see how that she really thinks through it in a much more targeted way.
Yeah.
Than what we saw, like even like the rich kids doing, who had a lot more malice in their pranks. Because our first introduction to them is them duct taping Pudge and throwing him into a lake, which is very dangerous, and he could have died.
Mm-hmm.
And then also peeing in the Colonel's shoes, which is truly just a dick move.
It's horrible. Yeah,
it's not even funny.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like having that contrasted with both Alaska's relatively harmless pranks, where it's both very targeted and meant to hurt you specifically and no one else, and it's very well thought out about how you personally will feel affected by it without ever putting you in real danger, and also contrasted against the Eagle, who is fairly useless in all of this.
Yeah,
like he's really trying to maintain this order and enforce the rules, and nothing's happening. It's not gonna go.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the school part of this school is very, very much not how I experienced school.
No. And I think that's because I went to public school. Just
same.
Throwing that out there.
Yeah, there was a lot less tolerance of bad behavior, and there wasn't like a group of peers that judged your actions and gave you and meted out the punishments. It was 3 lates, you get a detention.
Yeah. There's a lot more structure there. It is because you are not there all of the time. And I also feel like when I was in school, along with there being a much more structured environment with more rules, with more people enforcing those rules too, because they're just more adults. There was also like the negative feedback that I don't think my teachers respected me as much as this one like world religion history, like
religion. The world religion teacher really respected the kids and like was boring, but really wanted his time respected and respected the kids enough to be like, this is important information that you need to learn about, you know?
Yeah. And a lot of teachers have told me that, and I've believed them to varying degrees.
Yeah.
Solely on how I felt they were treating me as a person.
Yeah, it's about like, it was mutual respect. Like Miles respected this teacher because he respected these kids' intelligence and didn't talk down to them and like just expected the same respect in return.
Yeah. I think early on Miles said something about how the work that he was handing in at this old school would not be acceptable here.
Yeah.
And I think it's because the standard was so much higher. And I think that's really, really because, first of all, it's a private school. It is literally a privilege to be there. They don't have to take you, and they can kick you out, and you'll still be fine. But also because it was this institution where the students were respected and their intelligence was believed, and because they weren't monitored as heavily, they had that autonomy to really succeed in of themselves.
Yeah, they were respected as individuals who could make their own choices, and that includes, okay, you want to get into Harvard, you need to study for this pre-calc exam, and you know, and like there's so much value placed on education in this school, which is weird to say, but like their cheer is because they constantly lose the sports games. They're like, well, our SATs are higher.
Yeah, carrots, peas. We have higher SATs.
Yeah. which
what
is
a great cheer.
it's a great cheer. The SATs
Never
are
could have
but-
gotten away as that. Oh yeah, I'm sure these like the rich kids at least were also having SAT prep classes over the summer.
Oh yeah, and on the weekends where they were home in their mansions and air conditioning. But yeah, it's just like interesting how like these kids are allowed to test what they get away with in a way.
Yeah.
And like what the limits of their autonomy are in this really interesting way.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I really liked the scene where they all just go to McDonald's to study pre-calc.
Mm-hmm.
Something me and my friends never would have been able to do. Either to like leave campus while school was happening or where we would actually meet up outside of school hours
Mm-hmm.
in a large group just to talk about math.
Yeah.
And I was only friends with the nerds, really. You would think that would happen. But we were competitive and we were not helpful to each other a lot of the time, especially not in large groups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We created study guides as a class a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone would start a study guide and this was like, and we would like hand it around to each other and people would add to it and stuff. But hanging out was a separate thing.
Yeah.
That wasn't about school.
Yeah. Like you could and would study with like 2 or 3 people,
Mm-hmm.
but we would not have had the attention span or the respect for each other to listen to a peer in a
Mm-hmm.
large group.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And largely because there wasn't a large enough group of us that were aspirational enough and also interested in the same kinds of fields that we could do that.
Yeah.
Because I went to a really small school as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, my friends were just more interested in like Star Kid and the new Twilight movies than school.
2009, what a time.
What a time.
There were so many Twilight movies ahead of us, and we thought they would all be good.
I remember being so angry when I read Breaking Dawn because it was so bad.
It's not good. Wow. I will say, it did make me think that I shouldn't have sex, though. So, like, maybe they accomplished something. Who can say? I was very worried about pregnancy.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Mean Girls did that for me of like just the don't have sex, you will get pregnant and die line.
yeah.
Yeah. Which also Mean Girls came out in 2003 and that was geared towards teens. This came out in 2005. Like, this is nothing compared to Mean Girls.
No.
I'm just like thinking of the media that was out at the time that was geared towards teens.
And it really varied.
Yeah.
And I think they also all had different respects for their audience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think Mean Girls respected its audience, and it knew it was talking to teenage girls.
Mm-hmm.
And I think John could have guessed that it was mostly going to be teenage girls that were reading this.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know if he did, but I bet he could have.
It's one of those things where an author's debut novel is mostly for themselves.
Yeah.
Like, or the first book that they write. Not necessarily the first book released, but like, this book is for John Green.
Most books aren't successful. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
But like, there is still like not respect. And we see in a lot of this media for teenagers that was being created for teens in the early 2000s that dealt with like really serious issues of respect with their audiences. I think Mean Girls is a wonderful example of what is now considered white feminism.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't get into a lot of things, but it does a very good job of like respecting and explaining these ideals.
It's also like very much about a very specific type of group.
Yeah.
In high school. it's like about a very specific dynamic, and it does that really well. And I'm just like remembering the OC, which had zero respect for any of its characters, any of the people. But there's an entire SNL sketch was about how little that show respected the What You Say sketch was from the OC, because it was just that bad.
It was,
but gosh, the main character had a bisexual phase that was mostly about getting revenge on her mean mother. That was a time. That was one of my first introductions to bisexuality.
Yeah, my bisexuality has nothing to do with my mean mom. It's just a coincidence.
But it's like that said, this book has a lot of respect for its characters as three-dimensional people, even when the main first-person character doesn't have a lot of respect for like Laura or Alaska. Laura? I can't remember her name.
Laura, I think.
Laura. Like Miles does not have a lot of respect for the women in this book, but the book does, because Miles has to learn that these are people beyond him, and have feelings of their own and lives of their own, and that's such a huge part of this book. Yeah, and I feel like there's a level of respect there for these kids that is really great, and more YA books need to have that.
Yeah,
and more work, more media for a teen audience needs to have that, because like,
yeah,
Glee didn't have that, Riverdale didn't have that. Just like after 2000, I'm just like,
no.
When you consider the big things for teens, like,
yeah, it doesn't exist.
No,
and I don't know. I feel bad. So I know a lot of kids right now. I have friends who have children. And a lot of their kids are like, I would say like the oldest one is about 10. And the youngest ones are like second-ish grade. So they're like, I think there's a 5 and 10 right now. And a lot of these kids like Steven Universe, an excellent piece of media that really explores the depth of its characters over time and has complicated situations and ideas in which it's presented to a young audience. And one day they're going to feel like they're too old for it. And I don't know what to give them. Because there isn't that level of like depth and respect for an audience that is being made for like middle schoolers right now.
Yeah. She-Ra? The She-Ra show's great.
She-Ra show is great. I'm really just waiting.
Yeah.
I'm also very hopeful that the new Percy Jackson show will be good.
Oh, I have a lot of faith in that because of how much Rick Riordan is a part of that, and how much he's defended the black girl they cast as Annabeth. I'm just like, good.
Also,
this is what Disney should have been doing the entire time for all of the people they've cast, all of the people of color they've cast. Because did John Boyega get any protection? No. Did Kelly Marie Tran get any protection?
No.
Anyway.
And I will say, like, I would have been mad as hell if they had cast these like 12-year-olds. Also, an appropriately aged cast, which I'm very excited to see for once in Percy Jackson.
Yeah.
Like, I would have been so fucking mad if they threw these kids out to suffer. But there's only so much I can do as someone with like 700 followers on Twitter.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need institutional power or whatever.
Institutional power matters sometimes.
Okay, so let's talk. Let's still talk quickly about like what we didn't like about this book.
Oh,
so you have to about the religion class. So
the religion class. Every time they discuss like they discuss this a lot for some reason, or maybe I noticed it because it was annoying me. But every time they discuss the religion, the curriculum of the religion class, it annoyed me because they studied it as first Christianity, then Islam, then Buddhism, and then the next semester they studied Hinduism, Judaism, and Taoism. And it's just like, that makes no sense in any way, shape, or form, because you're discussing these big religions, but not the origins of and then you're discussing the origins after the fact, which are other religions. Like, Buddhism came from Hinduism, Christianity came from Judaism, Taoism came well after Buddhism started, I'm pretty sure. Like, now I'm trying to remember what I learned in high school, in my
Oh, it for sure
Asian lit
came
class.
after it.
It for sure came after. Yeah. So it's just like, it doesn't make sense to to study Islam before Judaism and Christianity when it came well after. It doesn't make sense to study Hinduism like second to last. It made no sense. And like, the way John Green justified it in text is that, like, Christianity, Buddhism, and Islam all had these central figures like Muhammad and Jesus Christ and Siddhartha Gautama, who like were the leaders of these movements that created these religions. But those leaders came from very specific traditions.
Yeah.
That needed to be discussed first. I don't know. Anyway, that kept annoying me, but I guess thematically it makes sense if you kind of read Alaska as this martyr through which this school learns something.
Yeah.
Alaska as religion.
I think it makes sense because she is seen as like a central figure who is responsible for everything good or bad that Miles encounters.
Exactly.
Which is not a healthy way for Miles to be as a person.
No. And he
but
realizes
I feel like,
that. But there is I feel like that's why religion is so important in this text. Like, that's part of it. But I don't know, just as a school.
Yeah, it's like a weird way to build a curriculum.
I just utterly disagree.
Like, I could see there are other ways you could do it.
Sure.
That I think are.
It doesn't have to be chronological, but
yeah,
it has to make sense.
I think you could also do it. So I think if you're not going to do it chronologically, you could do it based around like groupings of religion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could do like the Abrahamic religions,
exactly,
and then the ones out of like essentially a lot of it basically comes out of Hinduism. So like, just start there.
Yeah, just like do Europe and the Middle East. Like, well, it starts in the Middle East and goes to Europe, but do that, and then do Eastern Asia more.
yeah.
That makes sense.
Geographic, right, makes sense. Mm-hmm. Chronologically makes sense. Maybe even just having. I feel like it all felt a little bit off,
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think I would probably do it by geographic region. You would do it by chronological. I would do it
chronologically by geographic region. I think like start with Judaism, then go to Christianity, then go to Islam, and then start with Hinduism, go to Buddhism, go to Taoism and Confucianism and all that jazz.
Yeah, like I think there's like more logical ways to do it than what was being presented.
Mm-hmm.
But man, this book loves a metaphor.
It does.
So,
it's like a cigarette that you don't light. It's a metaphor.
Some atheist is really happy right now. I'm sure.
John Green loves a metaphor.
Loves it so much. So much more than what's reasonable, and also loves explaining it to us early on, just in case we didn't get it.
just like beating us over the head with it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I love Augustus Waters' blue eyes. This man.
We're just gonna roast him for a minute.
It's so fun. I really like looking looking for Alaska now that I'm older than John Green was when he wrote this book. Because I know in my head, John Green is always going to be someone that is like 15 years older than me and further along in his path of development of like being a human being.
Yeah.
But this version of John Green, what an idiot! Like, a wonderful author that I really respect, but like John Green, 3 years younger than me, like
yeah, like
ideas.
reading his like most recent work with like the Anthropocene Review and even the Fault in Our Stars, like he's grown so much.
Yeah. Like I love to surpass people.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, I'm better than this version of John Green. That was writing this book.
I think we should also. So I think another thing we talk about and dislike is John Green. It's comes through very clearly in Looking for Alaska, a complete, not just like a dislike, but disrespect of sports.
Oh yeah,
people
it's
who
so
like
funny.
Them.
It's very amusing how much Miles and Miles as a stand-in for John Green, because it's pretty clear that that's what he wrote a little bit. Like he just seems to hate sports and everything about sports, and he specifically, like Miles specifically, chooses the school because there is no athletic equipment. And first of all, that's really bad for your health. I'm currently in a lot of back pain because I don't exercise enough, which is really fun. And also, it's like knowing who John Green is now, which is just such a big fan of Liverpool FC and like sponsors a separate football club. It's just hilarious to me. And it's like, you're going to change your tune so soon.
Yeah. I do not enjoy the participation of sports as an athlete. It feels like a lot of pressure to me that I do not like. But I enjoy the World Cup, which I think, okay, first of all, I'm not calling it the Women's World Cup because it's the good one that everyone cares about. But I am open to calling it the openly gay World Cup. Just throwing that out there. This is the one where it's cool to be openly gay. I think that's a fun distinction.
I mean, that's most women's sports.
It's a more accurate distinction, honestly.
Yeah.
The storylines have been impeccable. Like, the drama peaked the whole way through. It's all been amazing. The losses, I have felt those. The wins, amazing. I empathize with every single team, which is not a good way to be a sports fan usually, but that's okay.
That's how you want to experience it, and I enjoy that so much for you.
I don't know any of these women. I don't really care who wins. But I want them all to get equal pay and have safe conditions.
Hell yeah.
And to like feel the joy that they are very clearly experiencing in so many of these moments.
I love that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I was a tennis player in high school. I was a student athlete. But also I was like good at school sometimes. So it's just like there is this dichotomy that exists between nerd and athlete that I just never experienced. Like, yes, I played the nerd sport of tennis, but like it's still very much a very physical sport. And then in college, I was like on the dance team. Like, you can do both. That's allowed.
Oh yeah, no, my senior year, so I was the prime minister of our nerd club. In the yearbook and in official documents, we are the gaming club. That's what we were called. But we all lovingly called ourselves the nerds. We played Dungeons and Dragons after school. And in the photo of that, everybody else in our yearbook photo had like tried to plan out cosplay. It's like, I can't cosplay. There's a game on the day our yearbook photo was scheduled, so I have to wear my cheerleading uniform. And they just kind of put me a little bit towards the back.
I love that.
When I was the head of the club, and I was like, of course. Like, people are complicated. Something maybe Looking for Alaska is trying to say. And does so with some success.
Yep. You're allowed to contain multitudes.
Yeah, there are versions of other people that are truly unknowable to me. And I feel fine with that.
Oh, yeah. See, I'm incurious in the way of like, I'm fine with you having things about
Mhm.
yourself that I don't need to know about.
There are.
I can
surely-
care about you without knowing all of you.
Okay. So I feel like there's like a limited number of people that I want to know well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because the other people I know aren't interesting or good people.
Yeah.
It is because it's really a capacity issue. I don't have that much spare time.
Seriously. Okay,
Yeah.
like this is why I don't understand polyamorous people, because like how do you have the time and mental energy?
I'm like I've considered that. And then I think sometimes it makes sense because there's often like going in to buy a house
Sure.
together with multiple incomes, like that
Which
really
is
frees
cool.
up some stuff. Oh,
Yeah.
like that. But I'm like really thinking about it. I'm like too ace for that for sure.
Yeah.
But like the time and energy it requires to maintain relationships. And I have like a lot of platonic relationships that are very, very important to me.
Oh yeah.
I can't keep adding new people. Someone will get dropped.
Thank you. Yes. Also, I think that is very much an ADHD thing.
Maybe.
Because
But
like I'm in the ADHD subreddits, there are always people like, I don't know how to explain to my friends that like I don't actively miss them when I'm not around them, but like I do appreciate them, and just because I'm not texting them all the time doesn't mean I don't love them.
yeah, I think there's a real reason that a lot of my friends also have ADHD. And it wasn't on purpose because we didn't know
No.
we had ADHD when we became friends.
No.
But let me tell you, the healthiest relationships I have, all of them have something wrong with their brains. None of them are neurotypical. Lots of us are on medication.
I love that for us.
It's just because we know.
Yeah. Okay, I feel like that's a good place to kind of wrap up a little bit.
Yeah, oh my god, yeah, this is great. So I think what we've really landed on is it's okay to not know someone. It's okay to have things that be complicated and still want to build intimacy without having a sexual relationship. And often a sexual relationship is not required for intimacy or vice versa.
Yep.
And most importantly, it's kind of silly to ban books. It's very silly to ban this book.
I think it's very silly.
And it's interesting that this is the first straight white book about being a straight white guy that we have read for the banned book series this whole time.
Yeah.
Because society, but like it's all very because of the sexually explicit content.
Yeah, it's just like if you don't want to read this book, you don't have to, but it doesn't deserve to be banned, and I think it's a pretty good book.
Yeah, I think what we really land on at the end of everyone is maybe just don't ban books. Maybe use your energy to do different things, like find books that you like.
Yeah.
So here, as always, we end on some action items. So it is the beginning of August, which means a lot of school boards are going to start meeting again this month or next month. It is not unusual for them to take a month or sometimes two off during the summer. That coincides with summer vacation because there is less oversight needed over the summer. Lots of teachers and principals go to conferences and do ongoing education to improve themselves, and the students aren't really there. So
that's great.
So that means now, though, there's about to be school board meetings, and they're going to be a little bit long this month.
Because a lot to catch up on.
There's a bit to catch up on. Like, there's probably finalizations of like hirings for new teachers that were hired over the summer. There's a like ongoing teacher shortage, so like that's probably going to come up. And they will be talking about what they want to do over the next school year, if they have any curriculum to review over the next year, if there are any open like positions for like possible sports teams, if kids want to introduce a new kind of club.
Ooh.
All of these things, they usually happen at the beginning of the school year. Because these are things where there tends to be a lot of proposals at the beginning of the school year from the community. So it's really a good time to get keyed in now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very easy time to start going to your school board meetings. Because there's this expectation that, things feel new in the fall. And even though the school board is dealing with ongoing issues that are happening within the buildings, now is a great time to get involved. Now is a great time to start going.
Yeah. Go to your local school board meeting.
Yeah. They're okay.
Yeah.
I recommend bringing like a crochet project or something to do. Because not all of it will be relevant to you, but still go and listen.
Mm-hmm. Also, if you want to specifically talk about banned books, if that's an issue in your district, talk about that. And also, the ALA has a lot of guides. The American Library Association is doing a lot to fight the book bans and has guides for you if you need to fight this in your own school district. So there's so much there that I can link down below once the stream is finished.
Yeah, I'll say, the American Library Association is a great place to get in touch with. You also might have a, was it? Let me double check. Okay, so it's called Red, Wine, and Blue. And it is a group that specifically organizes suburban women.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, it's a silly name, and I almost always accidentally say Red, White, and Royal Blue. Every time.
Great book.
Red, Wine, and Blue. Excellent book. Red, Wine, and Blue organizes suburban women, and they do a lot of organizing around banned books and in helping and ensuring a book ban busters, that they're people who understand the cost of extremism within our communities and what it means to take things away and censor things for our communities. And I find organizing is a lot easier when you are doing it with other people, and when you're doing it in community, because you probably care about book bans because you care about the people in your neighborhood and want better for them. So get to know some of the other people. Get to know some of the other people that are on your side and not just your enemies. Highly recommend it.
Yeah. I will also say, just make sure you're registered to vote. November's coming up pretty soon. And learn who is running for election. There are more local elections this year, but they are so important to your community. Just double check you're registered to vote, see who's running, contact your representatives, see what they stand for, and if you agree or disagree with them.
Yeah. There are a lot of local school board races, city council races. There are a couple states that are having state races for their legislatures. These are all really important and have an impact on our day-to-day lives, what's possible in our schools, in our neighborhoods, what gets funding. And also, if you happen to live in the very small school district I live in, vote for me.
Yeah, vote for Katrina.
Why not?
You can also donate to Katrina's campaign fund.
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
right?
You can. So I am working with my local Democrats who are working with a slate of people to do some fun things. I'm going to put it right here, this link. It's very long. I'll tweet it out too. But they're working to have a local slate of school board, as well as the people elected that they'd like to elect to city council, who are all wonderful people who really care about what is a really small community on the edge of Pittsburgh, but is filled with excellent people who want really good things for our community. Like to ensure that our kids have access to good books and access to good teachers. And maybe long-term, if our 100-year-old school buildings could be become fully accessible buildings or have air conditioning in all of them. it's a long goal. They were not built for that, but it might take me 10 years, but I'm going to do it. Those kids will have air conditioning.
Hell yeah.
Those kids will have air conditioning. It goes that way. But still, like, we got a chance.
Yeah.
And right now we're raising money to get yard signs for our supporters, and we would also like to buy literature, so when we go on and knock doors, we can leave something behind that has information about how to vote, and the candidates, and how to find us, because we need extra reminders for people to vote in 2023. There was no presidential campaign spending money on Pennsylvania.
It's an off season.
There's no Senate campaign spending money on Pennsylvania. There's not a lot of people from New York coming down to, like, volunteer in what is essentially the New York City suburbs, but is technically Pennsylvania this year. We could use some help.
Yeah, definitely donate to the local Pittsburgh campaign in this link down right there. That I will also link in the description later.
It's a time. It's a fun time. And those are some things you can do. And thank you for hanging out with us with the Banned Books Club.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining the stream. I had a great time.
I'm going to hit end broadcast.
Okay.